All right, is the discriminant, oh, again, quiz 4, Khan Academy, about quadratics. Is the discriminant of f, this graph right here is f, this is the f of x, or a function, is the discriminant of f positive, 0, or negative? Okay, discriminant. This is all about quadratic formula. So I'll remind you, quadratic formula is it's the way to find x if you have an equation that looks like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. You have to have an equation like that in order to get this. Now, in order for us to get this graph, you got to say goodbye to that 0 and just call that f of x or y. Okay, but again, we're going to relate this to the quadratic equation where y is 0, and then we can use quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And it's all over 2a. Don't forget, put that underline all the way across. Okay, the other thing is what's the discriminant? Turns out the discriminant is just this part underneath the radical. This blue guy is known as a radical. Okay, sorry, they're all blue. This guy over the top, that's known as a radical. The discriminant is just b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to write that out separately, b squared minus 4ac. And all we're trying to figure out is, in this case, for this graph, is this guy going to be positive, 0, or negative? Again, the discriminant, it is this guy right here. Now, this is one of those sort of lateral thinking types of problems because we don't necessarily know what a, b, and c are for this function. But we do have an understanding of how the graph of a parabola relates to the value of the discriminant. Okay, and the way we do that is we make a table, and in our table we have b squared. Let's go ahead and make a nice table, and in our table we'll have the value of b squared minus 4ac, and then we will have let's see here. We will look at the we'll look at solutions. Let me go ahead and put this here. Solutions. We're going to have to put a few things together. First of all, I'm going to remind you guys that if b squared minus 4ac is negative, then we will have two complex solutions or imaginary solutions. And I'm going to put in parentheses, no real solutions. Okay. And then if b squared minus 4ac is positive, a positive number, if we did the math and this turned out to be a positive number, we'd get two real solutions. And if b squared minus 4ac turned out to be 0, we would get one real solution. And the reason why, there's a really good reason why. It's because of if b squared minus 4ac was 0, square root of 0 is 0, and plus or minus 0 is nothing. It just goes away. Okay. On the other hand, if b squared minus 4ac was a positive number, then the plus or minus stays, and that's why we get two real solutions, because we get negative b plus this divided by 2a, and we get negative b minus this divided by 2a. And this, and anyways, so and then we get no real solutions. If we have a negative number under the radical, we only get complex solutions, no real solutions. Now, it turns out okay, now we need one more piece of information to totally figure out how this graph relates to the discriminant over here. Okay, because it turns out solutions themselves, let's go ahead and get this for you. Solutions have several different names. We'll use a fancy word called synonyms, okay, in English class. Solutions are also known as roots when we're talking about quadratic equations and parabolas, and they are also called zeros. And if you are looking, and you can find the zeros if you're looking at the graph. You can find the roots if you're looking at the graph. And then also if you're looking at the graph, the roots and the zeros and the solutions are also known as x-intercepts. So now what we're going to do is put together all of this information to try to answer their question. Is the discriminant of f positive, 0, or negative? And I don't know how the heck that got changed around. Sorry about that. Anyways, so the deal is this. Take a look at this graph of this parabola. How many x-intercepts are there? If you believe that there are 0 x-intercepts, then you and I agree. And if there are no x-intercepts, then no x-intercepts means no solutions, or at least no real solutions. And so that means that that our discriminant is going to have to be negative. Now, I'm not entirely sure how they want us to answer this guy, but that will be the answer to this question. Now, you notice that it took a bit of work, and I want you to know all this stuff. I want you to know that quadratic formula lets you solve an equation that looks like this. I want you to know that when we look at this equation and you see the 0 over here, it's really just that we set y equal to 0. And when you set y equal to 0, you get the x-axis. And so when you set y equal to 0, you get your x-intercepts. And then I also want you to know this table. I want you to know how these different types of discriminants get you these types of solutions. And I'd like you to know that solutions are called roots and zeros and x-intercepts. When you look at the graph, you should be able to see the roots or the zeros or the x-intercepts or the solutions just by looking at the graph. This one's not that interesting because there are no x-intercepts. Hopefully we'll get a chance with another one.